When the Flintstones landed in 1960, it was the first major primetime animated series, and therefore designed to appeal to adult viewers who were home in the evenings. In the decades since, though, the story of the Flintstone family has become a staple of children's programming, leading to a lot of stuff that just goes over kids' heads. These are the dark parts of the Flintstones you didn't notice when you were a kid. In the Flintstones' fictional Stone Age world, there isn't much in the way of modern appliances or conveniences, but the show does a great and humorous job of making the world as modern as possible with the limited technology available. The cars are famously powered by the driver's feet, making driving to the grocery store a strenuous and highly unsafe event. Houses are made of cut stone, paper is replaced with stone tablets. They even have cameras, ice boxes, and bowling alleys. The world is a technological dream to our ancestors with the sharpened rocks and rudimentary fire-making skills that define the Paleolithic period. But how exactly does Hanna-Barbera's prehistoric world manage to produce the equivalent of modern-day technology? Exploitation. Pick any episode and you'll see it. Animal exploitation is one of the major themes of the show from start to finish. For example, in the episode Ladies' Night at the Lodge, a dinosaur under the sink is used as a garbage disposal, while the trunk of a mammoth is run through the wall as a faucet. A trope within the show portrays these animals complaining about their unfair treatment. Not only are they exploited, but they're intelligent enough to know it. A dark reality is one where you strive to better your life but can't gain an inch. Unfortunately, it happens to real people all the time. They work in the same factory their entire life instead of climbing the corporate ladder. The American dream. The Flintstones world doesn't differ from ours in that respect. That's not to say that Fred Flintstone didn't try to rise in stature. He had dreams and aspirations. The modern Stone Age man didn't want to spend the rest of his life digging gravel for Mr. Slate. In the episode Flintstone or Prinstone, Fred admits to having a bleak future devoid of advancement, so he goes to college. His high school education was minimal because he'd spent all of his time focusing on football, so college was his second chance. But of course, Fred ended up in the same boat once at Princeton University, just drafted back onto the football team. The episode dips into dark satire of the working world when Mr. Slate offers Fred what he thinks is a promotion. He'd been to college now, after all. Mr. Slate quickly shoots down that silly notion, though, explaining that it had taken Fred 12 years just to get the hang of his job. No, Mr. Slate just wants Fred to play on his company football team. Down once again with Fred's dreams, down straight to the gravel pits. Season 6 of The Flintstones was struggling for a revival, and decided a new character might be just the thing to spruce up things for viewers. To achieve this, the series brought in a little green alien by the name of the Great Gazoo, along with new laughs. Gazoo was a funny guy. He was tiny, he showed up out of nowhere, and had the power to do almost anything, it seemed. What's better? Only Fred and Barney could see him. It makes them look crazy, and everyone laughs. But Gazoo wasn't exactly a good guy. He explains to Barney and Fred, after crash landing in front of them in the episode The Great Gazoo, that he's been sent to Stone Age Earth as a form of punishment. His future world of Zetox cast him out for creating a doomsday device that would destroy the entire universe.
Cruel and unusual punishment, that's what it is.
So, what do Fred and Barney do? They don't report him to the authorities, no. They hang out with the little green sociopath. The two of them are either harboring a genocidal fugitive or having a shared schizophrenic episode. Either way, it's dark. Fred and Wilma Flintstone have the type of marriage that needs some serious counseling, and it's been that way the whole time. Episode 1 starts some years after their wedding, but the trouble had apparently been going on since their honeymoon. Wilma and Betty are looking through an old Flintstone photo album in the episode The Gambler, and they particularly focus on wedding and honeymoon images. Fred graces the photos with his grinning presence, while Wilma clearly looks unhappy in each. Not one smile from the new bride. Why? Well, Fred is selfish and manipulative. The marriage also has its fair share of distrust, as highlighted when the ladies sneak into the Water Buffalo Lodge to see what their husbands are up to in Ladies' Night at the Lodge. Wilma's distrust is valid, though, since Fred is constantly checking out other women. In the episode Flintstone or Prinstone, Fred rattles off the dimensions of some old classmate he's mentally checking out. Fred's personality has a lot to do with their problems. As Wilma says to Fred in Little Bam Bam,
"You're jealous, thoughtless, loudmouthed, overbearing, quick-tempered, possessive, but not a heel."
At least Fred admits he doesn't deserve her right afterward. He doesn't. Poor Wilma. This theme isn't only dark, it's relatively sad. Plenty of would-be parents out there understand the pain that Barney and Betty went through for the first few seasons of the Flintstones. They tried to have a baby of their own, but their little cartoon bodies weren't cut out for it. Their childbearing fate was in the hands of the Flintstones gods, William Hanna and Joseph Barbera. So while the gods were deciding their future in the writing room, the rebels would spend their time moping about their biological inabilities or playing with pebbles once she was introduced to the show in The Blessed Event. Hanna-Barbera, though, were merciful gods, and the rebels wouldn't have to suffer forever, only for the first 3 seasons. In Season 4, specifically the episode titled Little Bam Bam, Betty and Barney's prayers would be answered after the couple implored their creators to grant them the slightest mercy in a last-ditch effort. They wished upon a falling star. Apparently, that's what it takes to sway Hanna-Barbera. Later in that episode, Little Bam Bam was left on the doorstep, and the rebels started their arduous journey through parenthood. Suicide is one of the darkest concepts to periodically poke its head into children's cartoons over the years. The Flintstones had its own take on it, and it's pretty messed up. After Bam Bam shows up on Betty and Barney's doorstep, the world is a brighter place, for a moment. But there's a whole bunch of bureaucracy in adopting a child, both in the real world and the Flintstones world. While waiting to hear back about Bam Bam's adoptions, someone else is awarded custody. Barney has taken all he can. Luckily, Bam Bam's new parents find out they're going to have a baby of their own, so they don't need to adopt Bam Bam. Cool, kind of. Bam Bam is now a rebel, but Barney is nowhere in sight. That's because he's on a bridge, holding a boulder, saying his last goodbyes before he jumps to his death. Fred saves him at the last second, and the children watching are only mildly scarred for the rest of their lives. Fred Flintstone has a lot of not-so-great qualities. He's angry, aggressive, manipulative, and he has a gambling problem. He doesn't lose a few quarters in the slot machine or drop $20 on a hand of poker either. He has an honest-to-goodness gambling addiction. Unfortunately, they didn't have addiction programs back in the Hanna-Barbera Stone Age, but they did have psychiatrists, and Fred received treatment from one for this exact problem. There's an episode of Season 2 devoted to Fred's gambling problem called The Gambler, when the paperboy comes over for a game of marbles and decides it would be fun to put a little money on the line. When Fred hears the word bet, his eyes get wide, and his head might as well pop off as he says the word bet over and over like it's some sort of mental tic. Wilma ends up telling Betty about the time Fred gambled away everything they had and how they couldn't afford food when he was on a gambling kick. Wilma had to force Fred to seek psychological help, but she had to make a bet with him to do it. Long story short, Fred's gambling issues return, and Wilma forgives him for losing a bunch of their money. Again. In case you haven't noticed yet, a majority of the storylines in the Flintstones seem to stem from Fred's personality flaws. He manipulates everything around him like a champion chess player. He deceives the people in his life like he's a secret agent. He'll do or say whatever he has to in order to make life go his way. The series begins with Fred's signature manipulation. Season 1, Episode 1. Fred and Barney have previously agreed to a date night with their gals, but Fred would rather go bowling. He convinces Barney to go along with one of his mastermind schemes. Fred has a head injury, and Barney stays back to take care of his friend while the ladies go to the opera by themselves. It gets worse. The two men use a flying machine that Barney had built to get to and from the bowling alley. The whole time, Fred is telling Barney that it's their invention and it's going to make the two of them rich, acting like the idea was his the whole time. So he didn't just use Barney to get out of the date, he leeches off him. Fred is a violent and manipulative guy that no one in their right mind would hang out with, so Barney must be nuts. All the same, the little guy sticks next to Fred through virtually anything. Fred's negative personality traits constantly come through in this friendship, one composed primarily of Fred taking advantage of Barney's good nature. If something doesn't go as planned, he'll immediately begin threatening his best friend with violence or belittling him in a way that had to have caused some major issues for Barney. Fred does do some nice things for Barney, though. He supports him when he's going through the adoption process in the episode Little Bam Bam and even saves his life. But it's hard not to see the wildly shifting treatment as a classical abusive relationship. In the first episode of this series, Fred threatens Barney for being noisy while he's trying to take a nap. He tries to slug Barney for getting a stuck bowling ball off his finger in the rock quarry story. And so on, and so on. He's not the sort of friend anyone would want to have. In recent times, our society has made leaps and bounds toward recognizing and eliminating body shaming. It still happens, but more people are recognizing the damage it does every day. It wasn't that way in the 60s when the Flintstones was in production, and Fred bore the brunt of the body-shaming attacks. Calling someone fat may be low-hanging fruit for childish laughter, but we understand now just how much trauma it can cause. Fred's a husky guy. He can't help it. It's the way Hanna-Barbera designed him. And as far as insults go, Fred probably dishes out more than anyone else in the cartoon. But he's the primary target for body shaming. From sly comments about his weight to outright calling him fat in some episodes, it's everywhere in the series. Some of the jokes were better set up than others, like this one from the episode The Hot Piano, for instance.
It won't go through. It's stuck.
Stuck, eh? Well, stand back while I throw a little weight at it.
But Fred, you're a lot of weight.
Check out the episode Fred Flintstone Before and After to see how bad it gets, as the entire episode is all about how fat and ugly Fred is.
Ah, but you know what they say. Television adds 10 pounds to your appearance.
Well, eating like a horse has added 50 pounds to yours.
Check out one of our newest videos right here. Plus, even more grunge videos about your favorite classic TV shows are coming soon. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you don't miss a single one.